Pre-styling is a subject that I've wanted to discuss for quite a while now. A couple years ago, this was going on, this was happening, but I feel like people back then were a little skeptical about it, and I think in some ways, some still are, but I really feel like there's a lot of people who are finally noticing the major benefits that this styling method brings to the table, and today I'm going to go over what it is, how to do it, why you should do it, and of course, what I'm using and what I'm not using. What is happening, guys? Mike here. Welcome back to the channel. I'm really glad to be making this video here today. We haven't had a new episode of Style Support for quite some time now, and that's because I've had so many review requests coming out on the channel and coming into the inbox. It's crazy, but sometimes I need a little break from that myself, and I know you guys do too. So today we're going to go over all things pre-styling. This is one of my personal favorite styling methods, and like I said, it's grown to be such a widely used technique now. It's really nice to see that, but I also think that there's some things about it that are a little misunderstood too, so I think we're gonna go into the rabbit hole with this today. Maybe not all the way down, but we're gonna go down pretty far here, starting first with what the heck is pre-styling. This right here, it's pretty easy to understand. Pre-styling in layman's terms is adding in a product to get an effect before you actually finish the process of styling. When you usually style, you have your hair and you have a styling product. That's pretty much it. Generic styling, if you will. What this is, though, this is styling before you style, which I think on one hand is a little confusing, but I think also it makes perfect sense. And what that brings us here is we have a pre-styler that we use, and then afterwards we have a post-styler that we finish up with. So you're styling before you style. See? It does kind of make sense. It's just I have an odd way of putting it, I think. I don't know. Anyway, the reason we do this is, it's a full list of reasons, really, depending on the person and the product. And some of this is new, honestly, with more people beginning to do this. But the reason that I found that when I narrowed it all down, the reason I found that we pre-style is to get more. And what the hell does that mean? Well, we get more of everything. We do it to get more hold. We do it to get more endurance, get more ease of use, get more volume, get more. Just get more of everything. Really, when you break it down, pre-styling is just performance enhancing and another way to get more out of what you're doing. And really, there's a million ways to do this for a million other reasons. And of course, we don't have time for that today, so I'm just gonna pick a few and go through them, and hopefully we can, get some more people on board with this styling technique. Let's start first with getting more hold. And for me, getting more hold and getting more endurance are kind of the same thing. They run hand in hand. So the majority of the time when I do this, I'm doing this to get more hold. That's really what I'm doing. When it comes to products used, that's really tough because we could make a list that's a mile long. I mean, there's so many things out there now that work as a pre-styler. It's unbelievable. It's so confusing, I'm sure, for people that aren't so used to having this much stuff around. I've slowly become accustomed to it with, the 400 some jars that I have in there and like the 100 I have up there. I get to test a lot of things. So for me, it's not as crazy as I'm sure it is for you guys. But for hold specifically, we have tonics, sprays, stylers, and by that I mean jarred stylers like waxes, creams, clays, paste, etc. And starting first with tonics, there are a few that I've tried that do this job here. Ruzel Orange is actually a prime example of that, and it will work as a pre-styler, but this is also an example of one that I'm not using right now. And the reason for that is, for me, it doesn't have as much hold as other things out there today, so there's really no reason for me to keep using it. When it comes to how this is done, though, I mentioned that we would talk about how this is done. I found there are really two ways to pre-style, with or without a blow dryer. I personally think that the blow dryer makes all and complete difference and should be used 100% of the time, and I think we're finally getting to the point that people are no longer scared of the blow dryer, which is fantastic. I've been waiting for this for so long. I still think there are a few out there, a little bit of fear when it comes to heat damage, and it's a whole nother issue I'm gonna digress into that if I keep talking about it, so I'm not. But I do think that there are finally a lot of people that are starting to realize what a great tool the blow dryer can be. But obviously it comes down to whether you want to blow dry or not. But no matter what, you add that into the whole pre-styling equation here. You take whatever you're going to use, your pre-styling tonic, spray, wax, paste, clay, whatever, and then you add it into your hair. You make the decision of blow drying or not, and then that's pretty much it. What I personally do is I start with freshly washed hair. This is just how I get the ultimate results. And then I add in my pre-styler. And if I'm using two, like say a tonic or a spray, let's go with the Dauntless grooming oil for obvious reasons. If I'm doing this, then the oil comes first. This is something I really wanted to say because I get a lot of questions about that. The oil comes first, so it has a chance to absorb into the hair. And then the pre-style spray goes in. And again, this will apply to other stylers too. You know, if you're using a jarred styler, for example, the same thing applies here. Oil first, styler second, if you're using two things. And that's a rule I always go by. Oil first, styler second. And we will talk about why I do this here in a minute. But this is the point, like I talked about, where we kind of come to a crossroads here, blow drying or not blow drying. Here is a result for not blow drying. You can see that here. It doesn't look like total garbage. I'm not going to go that far here and just bash it that bad, but look at the blow dried results. I mean, clearly it's better. You got far better results. And guys, we're talking about just using the heat to dry the product into your hair. There's really no trick or thing to be afraid of here. It's not really hard and it doesn't take that much time. And when we're talking technique here, you're just blow drying it. It's really not that hard. Personally, I do use a comb to kind of straighten out a slight wave that I got in my hair. But again, we're going to talk about that another day, probably a whole nother video that could go on forever too. But the results really do speak for themselves, and I think they are far better. And after we do this, we're done. We are pre-styled. We got hold, we got volume, we have a foundation established here, and then we can use that to add to the hold and styling benefits of whatever product that we want to use after this point. I mean, that's it. We're done. That's pre-styling in a nutshell. It's super easy. The last tip when it comes to hold that I want to offer though in regards to combos is when I do clay pre-stylers like Hybrid by Blumaan, for example, I like to then use a clay or matte paste as a post generally. And I say generally because it doesn't apply to every single scenario. Like if the finishing product is a wax or something that's natural or, you know, something like that, then that will work too. But I don't usually prefer to go beyond that in the realms of pomades and stuff with shine when I started with something that's matte and full of texture and volume and things like that, because you're just kind of like walking on top of each other, and it kind of ends up with a weird result. So that's just my 2 cents on that, because I know people like to ask that as well. If you are pre-styling with a wax though, I mean, that's where the combos really become limitless. You can pair those with pretty much anything. I mean, that's what's awesome about this technique. You can take a wax, and we will talk about some examples of products here, but you can take a wax and you can combo it with pretty much anything as in a post situation. That's where all the really cool combos come in. But when it comes to sprays, this is another section here. Sprays, I mean, good God, there's a ton of sprays out there. We got texture sprays, sea salt sprays, pre-style sprays. I mean, there's a ton of them out there. And instead of listing all of them again, spending all that time, there's two that I use a lot right now. And I say right now as in this moment in time. I don't know what I'm going to get to try tomorrow or next week or next month. So I'm not going to label anything my favorite or anything like that. This is just what I'm using right now at this moment in time that's working really well for me. The Damon Barber Texture Tonic, which I'm currently out of because I use it so freaking much, and that's obviously because it works so freaking well. But we have that, and we have the Sidekick Spray from byvilain. I've been using that for years. It continues to work really well for me and my hair type. It's an awesome and reliable pre-style spray. But then we have a new one here, the Amity Spray from Sheer Revival, which I'm going to be doing a review on soon, but I've been using that one quite a bit to get a really good view and look of it for the review, and so far it's working really well for me. A little spoiler on the review there, but it's working really well for me so far. For waxes, original by Blumaan, it's still classic. It's still a classic one for me, and I use it frequently because it works with so many things and it's super reliable. One also that I use a lot in this category is my own wax cream, but I don't want to go too deep into that whole thing because, you know, it's obvious. I don't want to, you know, push my own stuff that much. But I also find that if I don't mention it, people will think that I don't recommend it or don't have faith in my own products. So, you know, I'm trying to walk a fine line there. And of course, there's more products to talk about, but that's kind of what I'm using personally. People always want to know what I'm using in my personal time, and that's kind of what I'm using the most, you know, as far as pre-stylers go anyway. There's a whole lot more in the category of post-styling, but again, that's a video for another day. You see, another reason that I found that people like to pre-style is to nourish their hair. Sometimes people suffer from dry, frizzy hair, and that's just the nature of how their hair is. I mean, I always like to make arguments that we can fix this with good shampoos and conditioners, but sometimes people just suffer from frizzy hair and they're looking for a little more nourishment. Another thing this can help too, as we've talked about in previous situations and in previous videos, is when a product might be a little too dry for you in the application, but it's awesome in other ways, you can actually use this technique to smooth your hair out and make it really nice and slick, and then make that application a little smoother as well. This also has a bit to do with what I just mentioned with using the oil first and the styler second. I do that actually because I found if I overuse the oil or add it in after the pre-styler, after the product, it can actually break up or change the makeup of the product and just make it feel, it's not every product, but a lot of products I've noticed that it can kind of like break it down almost, and it makes it, you know, overly oily in the hair because you're kind of introducing that oil to the formula, and it just messes it up. That's just what I'm trying to say. I found that if I just add it directly to the hair, let it absorb for a second, it just allows the oils to do the job without impacting the product that's coming after. I just found it just an easier and better situation overall. Now, in regards to those softeners, tonics, smoothing serums, whatever you want to call them, really there's even more of these out there on the market that do this or serve this purpose than there are actual pre-stylers or styling products. I mean, these things are everywhere. A few though that I like to mention a lot besides my own grooming oil for obvious reasons is Templeton Tonics, which is fantastic, and the dude that makes them is really awesome. He's just a great guy overall. The Salon Guy 25 spray, another really great product, another really solid line too. That's a product actually that not only I use but my wife uses as well. Arcadian is another one. They have a great grooming oil, and I mention it a lot because I can actually use it in my hair by itself on lazy days where I just don't really want to do much but just keep my hair out of my face. I mean, that grooming oil has no hold in it whatsoever, but it's got enough control through the oils that it can just keep my hair out of my face, which is all kinds of awesome in my opinion. Lastly though, I do want to touch briefly on how to choose or identify a possible good pre-styler. The way that I do it is generally if the product is matte or natural in the shine department, then it's at least eligible to be tried as a pre-styler. And I say that because I found through experience that stuff that have a low shine or any kind of presentable shine, it can kind of become greasy in the hair when you hit it with that blow dryer. When you hit it with the heat, it can really just become overly shiny. It can take over, restrict volume, make your hair kind of greasy, things like that. And of course, that's not a blanket statement, meaning every single product with shine. I'm sure that even I have come across a product out there that has some shine and still works as a pre-styler. I'm sure I could go back and find one, but that's just a general thing that I do, unless something about the product kind of gives me an indicator that it could possibly work as a pre-styler, and then of course I try it. But generally speaking, I have stayed away from pre-styling with stuff with shine present. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I get asked all the time, and I'm sure it's going to pop up, you know, after I post this, is this a good pre-styler? Is this one a good pre-styler? Can you recommend me a good pre-styler? How about this versus this? You know, those are all getting harder and harder to answer these days with how many products are out there, and there's not enough time in the day to answer them all. So restricting it down to trying it out, for one, trying it out, you'll never know unless you try it out, but narrowing it down even further to say, is it a natural or a matte product, then it has a possibility of being a good pre-styler. That should answer a lot of those questions up front. That's just kind of how I'm trying to help everybody all at once. But that's pretty much all I got for now. Obviously, this was kind of an intro to pre-styling type thing. So if you have any more questions about pre-styling specifically, not just, you know, product versus product type stuff, but if you have any more like technique type questions, you know, shoot me a comment down there and I will read through them and try to answer as many as I can, see if I can help some of you guys out. If you would be so kind as to like this video and subscribe to my channel, that would be fantastic. It's a huge help to me and I really appreciate you doing that. Make sure you also hit that bell icon so you can be notified of new videos coming out. I got new content coming every week on all types types of things. I got some really cool content actually coming your way very soon too, so make sure you have those notifications turned on. But that will do it for this one. Thank you once again for stopping by the channel today and checking out this video. I will be back once again with you guys here very soon. I said veer. I will be back here with you guys once again very soon. I'm actually preparing right now to go film Behind the Brew with Flagship, so it should be a really awesome time and lead to some really awesome content. So keep an eye out for that. Take it easy. I'll see you next time.